over to college football. Week 1 began last weekend with what could be referred to as week 0. Florida edged out Miami. Hawaii pulled the upset against Arizona. Make sure to check out Taylor, Jim Baviglia, and my series Power 5 picks for our betting picks for 5 of the biggest games of this coming weekend. Rick, do you see any potential betting upsets on par for on the matchup sheet for this week?
Oh, I had 2 of them in my 2 college picks this week. First of all, if you're picking against Oregon, if you're picking Auburn against Oregon, you're going to lose. Oregon's going to go down there and they're going to win. They're getting 3.5 points. They have more talent on both sides of the ball. The only thing Auburn has the advantage of is their defensive line. And Oregon's returning 5 offensive linemen. 4 of them are projected NFL draft picks. They got 90% of their skilled players back. They got arguably the best quarterback in all of college. People are talking about him being a top draft pick next year, number 1 overall if it's a quarterback needing team. 6'6", he's got a cannon, he can run the ball. And then defensively, they had the number 1 recruit in all of college football last year, starting at defensive end. They got most of the returners back at linebacker, or most of their starters back. They got 17 starters returning. Auburn doesn't even have their starting receivers. They have an average running game. They've lost some of their best players on defense. They're starting a true freshman quarterback. Like, come on now. Come on, man. Oregon's going to upset them, win the game outright. That's pick 1. Pick 2, I think Northwestern's going to go in and beat Stanford on this weekend. They're 6.5-point underdogs. I think at the very least they cover the spread. Stanford has so many holes. They have more holes than Auburn does. They've lost all their skilled players on offense. Their defense was average last year, and they lost their top tacklers for defense in the secondary at least. And then Northwestern, they've got a brutal defense coming back. They're returning most of their starters as well. And they're going to have a better quarterback this year than they had last year, a 5-star recruit that transferred from Clemson. Most of their skilled players are back. They got better offensive linemen this year than last season. And last season, what did they do? They went to the Big Ten title game. They won the Big Ten West. Come on now. Are you telling me they're going to be near a touchdown underdog when they've improved their team and Stanford's regressed? Give me a break. Those are my 2 upsets.
I think that Taylor and I each agree with you on one of those and disagree with you on another one. So, because I think that Taylor, you also picked Northwestern, right?
I have Northwestern covering the spread, so I didn't go as far as Rick as calling a victory, but I have them covering like 6.5, I think.
Yeah, and I agree with you on Oregon. I think that this is as much as a week 1 game can be. This is kind of like a boom or bust game for the entire Pac-12.
Yep.
Because this is, it's Auburn, it's not Bama, it's not Georgia, it's not Florida. If Oregon can't prove that they belong in the conversation with the top 4 teams in the SEC, there's no way that the conference winner can prove at the end of the season that they belong with the top 4 teams in the country, even if they were to go undefeated. It's unfortunate. It's just the way that, a lot of conferences, basically every conference except for the SEC gets looked at, which is that if the traditional powerhouse is not doing well, the conference is just terrible. So I agree with you, though. I think Oregon, it's a neutral site game. I think that they've got a really good chance. Both teams were much worse last year than they should have been. I think that Oregon, if both swing back, I think Oregon swings further. I think that Auburn's swing up wouldn't go quite as much.
Well, the biggest knock on Oregon's always their defense, and last year they won their bowl game 7-6. So, come on now. Auburn's lost most of their skilled players, a true freshman quarterback. Come on. If we just go quarterback versus quarterback, you've got a Heisman Trophy candidate versus a true freshman. Give me a break.
7-6. That sounds like a good old SEC football game. That is some entertaining television. God, that would be if I ever turn on an Oregon game and it ends up being 7-6, I would just be so unbelievably disappointed in having watched that. Yeah, you watch Oregon for the offense. But anyway, that will be an interesting game. What was that, Taylor?
And the uniforms.
Yeah. I love that, though, because there was a great article I was looking at on sportslogos.net. They were breaking down all of the uniform changes for the year because there are a billion of them. And I kind of like, because I love logos and uniforms, and maybe we could talk about this in a future week, but I love the fact that Oregon has made it their unique look, their iconic look, is that they never wear the same thing twice. It's in the same way that Bama never changes, Florida State with the gold helmets, Miami with the U on the white. All of those are iconic. And Oregon is iconic because if you go, what team is that? It's Oregon. And I love that. But maybe we do, at one point, we could do like a bracket week or something, maybe in December when we got to, like, when we're waiting for bowl season to get back to going or something. We could do a breakdown like the best college uniforms or something. But anyway, sticking with college football, according to a report from ESPN, Alabama inside linebacker Dylan Moses is likely to miss the entire 2019 season. He suffered a knee injury in practice on Tuesday. He was a finalist for the Butkus Award a year ago. He ranked number 13 on Mel Kiper Jr.'s preseason big board for the upcoming NFL draft for 2020. I can't imagine this is going to change any of our minds about Saturday's game for the Crimson Tide because they're hosting Duke. I don't think that losing the linebacker is going to change our minds on that. But does this injury change the landscape of the SEC at least, and maybe even the college football playoff with this injury, with Alabama maybe being shorthanded for the entire season, Taylor?
I don't really think it does, mostly because it's Alabama and they're just going to replace a 5-star guy with another 5-star guy. Shane Lee is the inside linebacker replacement. He's another top recruit. This guy was 6 feet tall and 215 pounds in 8th grade. So Alabama just keeps churning them out, and their entire roster is filled with the best player or the guys that would be the best player on different teams. So I'm not very worried about it. Maybe if it was Tua, you could have questions about it. But, you know, with all the depth they have at every position, it's impossible to say that one guy can just torpedo their whole season.
Absolutely agree with my esteemed colleague. You know, Alabama has a half dozen players that are projected to go in the first round next year. A half dozen players. And that's just before the season starts. Who knows? It could be even more by the time the season's done. With that said, so they go what, from a top 10 defense to a top 20 defense? Is that really going to make a difference in the SEC or in the playoffs? I mean, yes, he's a stud. He's a great player. He's the quarterback of their defense. But they got so much depth, so many top-level players in every aspect of the defense. There's no way. And even if their defense is not as dominant, that offense is still going to be a juggernaut. They're still going to put up close to 30 points a game easily. You know, and then defensively, so they don't hold people to 2 touchdowns or less. They hold people to 17 points or less. I mean, seriously, it's not going to be a big difference. They're still going to go at worst, 1 loss on the whole year, except for maybe when they get to the playoffs. No, it doesn't change anything except for the kids, you know, health and draft stock. Other than that, it doesn't change anything. Still the best.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it'll change anything for the regular season. I do think that it makes Clemson a bigger favorite to win the national championship. You know, if we still want to count this as preseason, since we're recording this before the Thursday night games, and we've only seen 2 games in all of FBS to this point last weekend. I think that they're still the best team in the SEC. That doesn't really change my mind. They're still going to win the SEC West. They're still going to, in all likelihood, win the SEC championship game unless something flukish happens. They're still going to make the college football playoff, maybe at 12-1, maybe at 13-0. But yeah, that would be where the first time I would think that this injury might come into play would be matching up against Clemson when they're actually in that, 2 games to win the national championship, and they're playing the best of the best in the country. And also whichever second SEC team gets in there. Bam! Had to get a little shout in. I hope you enjoyed that segment from the Odds On Favorites podcast. If you did, there's plenty more where that came from. Click on the link on your screen now to be taken to the complete podcast from this week, or check out the channel to find the other individual segments. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Odds On Favorites YouTube channel for plenty more sports and sports betting picks, tips, and how-to guides.